Okay. Whitney, I'm so excited to be speaking with you today.
I'm excited
Well,
to be speaking to you too.
yes, yes. I feel like we were already starting to get into some juicy stuff, and we were already talking about style because folks, this wasn't pre-planned. I know we look a little bit alike. We're rocking the hair back with with the wrap. Plus we got the pink. I mean, I got some beige on, but I got pink on. And then a couple of years ago I got LASIK surgery, but I spent most of my years cycling with glasses and most of my life with glasses. So if this interview had been a couple of years ago, we would have both had glasses on. So I already feel like we're sisters, twins from another men. I don't know. I tried to make that work.
Close, it's close enough. It was close enough.
Twins from an there's no way to there's no way to rhyme it. Well, let's introduce ourselves. So Whitney, you're the star of the hour, so why don't you go ahead and start?
My name is Whitney Washington, and I started cycling in 2021 because I just really wanted to experience an adventure. And um, in 2020, while we were all in our houses, I was watching a lot of different adventure videos. I was like, um, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I
Yeah.
just knew that I wanted to do something. And for the past few years prior to that, I always tell my friends, like, yeah, I'm going to go on an adventure. I was like, I'm going to bike across America, or I'm going to skateboard across America. I'm going
Uh-huh.
to kayak across America. And my friends were like, okay, cool. You know, and then, and I want to say 20, I think it was 2021. Um, one of my friends sent me an article about, it might have been in 2020, about the Great American Rail Trail,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Great American Rail Trail.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I could do it that way because it
Mm,
had camping, free camping along the way. I was like, I can just go as slow as I need to, and hopefully over time get faster and faster, and then I'll make it across America. And I bought
wow.
an Amtrak ticket and just packed my childhood bike and got some gear that I thought would work, and made my way to Washington D.C. and I
From where?
started that trip from Jacksonville, from
Oh,
Florida.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where it started.
And how long did it take you?
Took me like 3 to 4 months because
Okay.
there's so many technical difficulties. And at first I was like, I'm going to bike every mile,
Uh-huh.
but as you're out there and as you're like learning what's for you, um, and I had a lot of technical difficulties connecting with the rail trail organization. They
Mm.
had like suggested I not go through Wyoming since I was a noob, not go through Wyoming and parts of like the eastern part of like Montana and stuff like that. And they're
Yeah.
gonna have me do like a detour route. But
Mm.
with the bike that I had, I kept having tire problems and the spokes
Oh,
kept breaking. So I eventually uh, rented a car, and
okay.
it was my first little mini road trip. And I drove from Nebraska to Montana, and then I continued my trip. You know, and
Yes.
um, and at first, you're like, oh, you wanted to ride every single mile, but I learned like it was okay. Like I rode the 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 ride that was for me, and I had
Yeah.
fun because I got to go to Yellowstone. I would have never biked Yellowstone the way that they were driving that, like, just driving Yellowstone caused me anxiety, so biking those I would have never done it with those
Uh-huh.
RVs, would have never done it, so, like, the way that it went, being able to look back on it, I am very grateful for the way that it went for me, and I respect my first ride, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm it was fantastic. So
That's awesome. That's you were saying so much, and I was just thinking, I was like, I resonate with so much of that because you think it, you have in your head this way that it's gonna go, and you're like, I'm gonna bike every mile, I'm gonna dumpster dive, I'm gonna stealth camp, I'm gonna do all these extreme things that I see other people doing, and you quickly learn that you gotta throw comparisons out of the window and you gotta just do your own thing based on your body, your mind, whatever is going on at that time, because it's not, you're not gonna have the same experience that other people have. And if you try to replicate what other people are doing, you're just messing yourself up, you're torturing
yeah,
yourself. And you're not having an experience that is actually genuine and authentic to you. So you
exactly.
gotta throw that people pleasing, comparisons, and everything else out the window from day one, or else it becomes a terrible trip as opposed to one that's transformative. So I'm happy you did what's best for you.
Thank you. I'm happy I did too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You were saying that you jumped on in a car. You rented a car. I did that in, so I biked. I'll go to my introduction. So in 2013 was my first bicycling trip across the country, and I actually took my dog with me, who is here. She is still kicking. I took her when she was almost 2, so she was 1.5 when we left, and now she's almost 14, and I can't even imagine the day that I do not have her with me. So we're not gonna even talk about it. Let's knock on wood. But she is still here kicking and energetic, but she can't do the cycling anymore. So she's retired. But my first trip was in 2013, and I cycled a lot from, it took me forever. So I know a lot of people were getting done with their cross country trips in like 3 months, but it took me about 6 months to do it. And I spent a lot of time on the East Coast because I was just trying to figure out, okay, where am I going to start heading west? And also I was doing the same thing you were doing, which was like, how am I doing this? Especially with the dog, like how am I how am I pulling all of this weight? How many miles can I do every day? Am I even capable of this? Because I got my dog's weight plus my gear, and then of course my own weight.
Right.
And I didn't have any experience. I don't know if that was you too. Did you have experience when you jumped on the bicycle?
I hadn't ridden my bike in like 10 years, and I had just like got on it in 2020, and and so once I found out about that trail, I was like, we're gonna wing it. We're just gonna get out there. Like the how that first trail was on the Great American Rail Trail,
Uh-huh.
where uh it had water, it had essentially like all the essentials, it had camping spots. I was like, we'll figure it out. I have places to sleep. I have the water I need, figured out, and I did that. That was a winging adventure for sure.
That's awesome. I am I am sold. I'm kind of wanting to go on this Great American Rail Trail now, like, as you're talking about it. But the reason I was talking about that and asking you is because I had to accept a ride in 2 locations. One was I started to not get homesick, but as I got closer to where my mom was, the state that she was in,
Mm.
Missouri, so it was like the halfway mark, I was like, I want to see my mom. So I got a ride to St. Louis, hung out in St. Louis with the people I had met for a day, and then my mom picked me up from there and she took me to another town in Missouri, and then I continued on from there. And then the second place I had to get a ride was Route 50 out of Colorado. Oh my goodness. It's called the loneliest road in America.
Okay.
And service is like 200 and 250 miles apart, right? So that's a good, as slow as I was going with a dog, I can't carry that much water. I can't even cycle that far in a day. Definitely not 250 miles. I can't. At this point, I'm probably going almost 50 miles a day. So that's up to what, 5, 7, almost 7 days of, before I have water, food, and everything else. So, yeah, I had to. So that's where I rented a car and I just said, let's do a road trip on the loneliest road in America. It was beautiful, just as beautiful in a car. And just like you said, where you were driving and it was anxiety, that's how I felt when I was in the car. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't ride this on a bicycle. I would have been one of those stories on Good Morning America. Missing cyclists, lost in the desert,
100%.
found dead. I was like, yeah, this is beautiful to drive, but if I were cycling, this would not have been fun. So.
No, I agree. I think, like, for me, like, the way that my whole trip was, because in the beginning, I was gonna, like, fund it by, like, editing other people's videos while I was on the road, and I
Yeah.
had connected with a girl who was, um, walking or hiking the Appalachian Trail, that hiking route, doing
Yeah.
the whole thing,
Yeah.
and, I was editing her videos while I was on that trail,
Oh, wow.
and her manager, had reached out to me because I had told her I was gonna be biking
Uh-huh.
as well, and, but that girl, she had, like, her big goal. She's like, "I was gonna be the first Black woman to get
Uh,
the Triple Crown," and all that kinda stuff, and so because, like, they were already in that space, once they found out about me, they're
uh,
very hyped. They're like, "Okay, we got another one who's gonna be biking across America." And I
uh,
think, like, when you have that, pressure, like, especially in the
uh-huh.
beginning where it's like, because I did want to bike every single mile, um, and then you realize, like,
Mm,
for me, every single mile just uh it wasn't gonna work out that way,
yeah.
it had to work out the way that it had to,
Yeah.
and it kind of felt like I was, like, letting people down and not doing it
Mm,
the way that I had originally intended. Because she got me on a live stream, and because I wasn't even planning to raise a GoFundMe, but they're like, "Make a GoFundMe," and
yeah.
and then people donated, and it
Yeah.
created all this pressure to wanna do it, like, the
Mm,
correct way, and you realize, like, I did it the best way that I could, and I was able to get to Washington, D.C. It didn't look like, the way that other people intended. I think that was one
yeah.
of the biggest things that, like, brought me down the first time. Once
Uh-huh.
when I was able to look back at it, I was like, but the way that I rode my ride made it feel so freeing, and I was able
Yeah.
to experience so much more
Yeah.
because I stopped, like, letting myself be, like, restricted to somebody else's expectations,
Yeah.
and it was very hard to be okay with that at
Yeah.
first. I guess because it's like that, you just feel so guilty that you're not doing it the
Yeah.
correct way,
Yeah.
um, and I was just like letting myself be okay, like, you did everything as best as you could, and so um, yeah, I really did. I love that first because I learned so much about myself, and also
Yeah.
just learned, like, as long as you do these adventures in your best way, it'll be okay, so
Yeah. You kind of learn early on, though, about not following people's expectations. I don't know if you experienced this, but did you experience resistance in the beginning to going? Like people saying, don't do that. The world's crazy. You're a woman going by herself. You're a black woman going by herself. What are you thinking? You're crazy. Did you experience that kind of resistance and have to kind of fight against that to go, or was that not your experience?
no, it absolutely was, because I think that's why, like, that first trip had, because I was posting a lot on that first trip, and but after that trip, all my other trips, I had built up so much anxiety against, like, about posting,
Yeah.
and the biggest part was, like, my my family,
Uh,
you know, my
um,
my parents had to, like, they're still not necessarily used to it, but
yeah.
they ha- there's been a journey for them to, like, be okay with it, because like I like doing this and I want to continue to do this. You guys have to be okay with it. But I remember like my first trip, I got like a message from even my grandmother. She's like, "You need to head back home," and she's like this 80-year-old woman, and it's like I get her, like I get her fears,
Yeah.
and it's like I I really do love being out here, and I don't know how to explain that to them because it's just like they see the fears and what could go wrong more than they see like what could go right, and
Yeah.
trying to push through that. And I think like right now that has been like one of my biggest battles, just like kind of essentially like being defiant,
Mm,
and and just like doing what it is that I know is right for me, even though
yeah.
like you aren't raised to be defiant like that.
Yeah.
Um And so it's been a lesson in a lot of things growing as a woman, as Black woman, just like sometimes you just got, even though like those fears are there, just like allow yourself to keep going because it's clearly called on your heart for a purpose, and
Mm,
you've been doing good. You know that you pay attention while you're out there. You know that you take the time to um, uh, follow your gut and
mhm,
and trying to convey this to people that only see the scary parts
yeah.
is just going to drive you crazy sometimes. You just got to continue on your journey. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing that I've been like working through. Because it can be overwhelming, it can be overbearing, but it is it is a journey of like self-growth and self-love to do what it is that's
Yeah.
important for you.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head with the self-love there because I don't I feel like after cycling, that was something that I gained the most of, like an appreciation for my body and its ability to do this amazing physical feat, but not just my body, the resilience of my mind, right? The ability to keep pushing forward when the pain is overwhelming or to keep pushing forward when my anxiety is through the roof because I don't know where I'm going to sleep or what I'm going to eat or how I'm going to pay for this or do that, right? Or if I get lost or if I lose something. There are so many challenges that you face on the road that you take back into life with you, right? When you have to go back to adulting and doing the
Yes.
the other stuff, you take so much back into life with you. And I'll share really quickly one of the biggest things that it's still a journey, like even all these years later, it's
Yeah.
still a journey for me, but one of the things that I value about cycling is that it kept me so far outside of my comfort zone for so long that I got used to challenging myself to approach experiences in life outside of the comfort zone of my thinking and other people's expectations, right? So
Mhm.
it's not just the cycling. Now it carries into other things in life, whether it be decisions I make around my career or where I choose to live or how I choose to live, right? So now I'm constantly thinking, how can I challenge myself to be fearless in thinking against the grain of how I've been taught and tradition and everything else that we kind of get bogged down by our guilt and everything else, right? So what is, now that you've done a few trips, what is that those grand lessons mean? And it's going to continue coming. It's going to be years to come. You're going to be having these different lessons, but you probably have some lessons now pretty soon after you finish your recent trips. What are some of the big lessons that you've taken so far from those?
I definitely the one of the biggest lessons is the idea of like riding your own ride and letting yourself uh, being okay with that, and letting yourself enjoy that because we're not gonna all go through life exactly the same,
Yeah.
and growing up, I always had that thought process, and you know growing up as a bigger person,
Mm,
I always desired to do extreme sports and sports like that, you always get the gotta
Yeah.
lose weight first, gotta lose weight first type things.
Ah,
And and then being knowing that my body was able to uh, do this ride, do all of the rides that I've been on, it's
yeah,
like, you know, my body is pretty cool, you know, just as it is. And allowing myself to try the things even if I'm scared, you know. And as I've been growing, just letting myself putting myself in situations that, you
yeah,
know, I may not think that I'm completely capable of at the time, but just trying it anyways and feeling my way through because I've done it before, so
mm,
I can do it again
yeah,
and see what comes from it. But also, you know, creating those boundaries and trusting my gut and not letting um, people in situations take advantage of me. You know, being able to speak up for myself. You know, uh,
yeah,
even if it's scary. And
yeah,
so that has been a very big lesson for me because I have been somebody that's been very quiet and very obedient type person, and
yeah,
that process of breaking out of that has been has been a very scary but fulfilling process, you know. And I'm still in that, uh, still on that journey, you
yeah,
know, but making sure that I look back and respect that, you know,
yeah,
you've done well, you know, and you're going to
yeah,
continue to do well as long as you let yourself
yeah,
um, keep growing, you know. And that's definitely one of my biggest things that I always come back to in life, you know,
yeah,
because sometimes people want things for you and you know that you got to do things in your own way for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I'm gonna go back to something here about being plus size on the road. See, it's been 2018 was my last cycling trip, and that's when Fiji, my dog, retired. So I haven't really been cycling since then. Tell me, what is the landscape right now for plus size clothing and plus size gear? Because I know you said you were having some trouble with your bicycle. I don't know if that was due to weight or just the type of cycle, because some cycles are made for touring and some are not, right? So what was your whole experience with finding gear as a plus size woman, and is have you felt that has improved, or are we still in the same boat we were in all those years ago?
I definitely think like clothing wise, like I know that there's better out there
Okay.
because you do realize like with fabric how
Yeah.
clothing can be very, it can create its own weight in your bags, you know,
Yeah.
just clothing by itself. And learning about that, and but then you realize, oh, it's extremely expensive. And so like you have to find, whether it be just wearing what you have or finding alternatives,
Yeah.
um, because it could be expensive or there's not very many options, whatever the
Uh-huh.
problem is. So like right now clothing is definitely something I'm still working on because that causes a lot of weight on my bike for sure.
Yeah.
But like biking wise, yeah, that first bike ride. Um, so my childhood bike, that bike was very heavy, and I
Mm.
eventually on while I was out there, uh, I gave that bike away. There was like
Okay.
a kids program, and the lady, she took it right from the hotel that I was staying at. Got my
Yeah.
bike, and like right by that hotel was a Dick's Sporting Goods, and
Okay.
I bought a bike from there, and it
Okay.
was like a hybrid road bike, but it obviously was everything was like factory stuff, and so
Yeah.
the spokes, they weren't rated for all of that weight. You know, it was
Yeah.
the weight of everything that I had plus myself. You know,
Yeah.
so I rode for quite a while before I got spoke. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like I got to maybe Ohio. So I got
Okay.
through the first through trailed before the spokes started breaking. But then like I started having spoke problems. But
Gotcha.
but then there was a guy from Wisconsin, a bike owner from a bike shop.
Okay.
He drove down from Wisconsin and brought me a new bike.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, to Indiana, and
Okay.
and still the bike wheels were not able to to carry, but as after that ride, I was able to talk to him like, what would be better wheels, and I was able to buy those wheels. And so when I
Gotcha.
went to Alaska, those wheels were fantastic. So
Right.
I have been able to find better equipment that can handle weight, you know.
Right.
So like I think the biggest thing now is like finding better clothes so that they don't create more weight that needs to be there,
Yeah.
because the more you can keep down weight, the because when I did Korea last year, and
Uh-huh.
there were so many mountain passes and pushing a heavy bike up so many mountain passes was so hard. Like it
Yeah.
was so hard, so finding ways to cut weight, especially with like clothing, is like my next endeavor for sure.
Gotcha. Oh my goodness. I mean, you said a lot of things that I resonated with, but I'm trying to keep track of them in my head, and I'm like, oh, there's so many good things and there's so many good nuggets. The first one, oh, what was the first one? The first one was about the bike. Oh yeah, I was gonna say that. One of the things I had to think about starting out because I had my dog was weight. So I didn't have any problems with my bike starting out because I did my research and then I was like, if I'm going to spend money on anything, the very little bit of money that I have as a college student, I'm going to have to spend it on getting a really good bike. At least the bike and the trailer for my dog and her little leash attachment, that has to be on point because
Sure.
I'm responsible for another life. So I can't be out there, just willy-nilly and breaking down, So
Exactly, for
I
sure.
I need to make sure so I didn't have any problems with my bike, but the thing with clothes, my goodness, I wore my poor capris. I had 2 pairs of capris and 2 shirts, and that's all I wore on both my trips. So I went across the country, across the United States, and then I went across Canada, and on both of those, I wore those 2 same they were so worn out. I mean, those poor babies. They just I mean, they had holes in them by the end. I mean, it was just that. And then I started to have one of the things that I learned about was kind of a fit of the bike. So I started to have knee problems and oh my gosh, it was so painful. And so when I got an adjustment where with my seat and everything, then, things started to feel better. But yeah, there was just a lot of things that you had to learn about your body and adjust and
Yeah.
some things that are universal and then some things that are not. And another thing as you were talking was one of the things that I really hate that people ask after a cycle tour for plus size women is, how much weight did you lose? This is not how it works, ma'am,
It's not how.
sir, and they and whoever.
No, I remember because like when I was in Korea, like it was like such a shocker. They're like, "So how are you biking and you're still big?" I'm like, "That's not how that's not how weight works," and it's so like I don't feel like educating how any of that works. I'm
I
too
just
tired
accept
to
it. I'm like,
try. I'm like, okay.
just yeah, you don't waste your breath. It's like and you have to go into all the science of it. I'm not a scientist. I'm not about to do all that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I want to say something. I'm like, exercise is only 10% of it. It's 90% diet, and I still love my ice cream. Okay, come on now.
Exactly.
Okay, I may be cycling, but you know what I'm doing on my rest breaks? Eating a pint of ice cream.
It's like I just went up a hill in the heat. I'm gonna have what I want.
Yes, I remember too when I was in Canada. I was walking up a mountain pass, and there was a store on like at the top of the mountain pass, and I went in there and they had Ben and Jerry's. I got me a pint. and I sat on the side of the road before going downhill, and I ate that whole pint of ice cream. Okay, I was getting my muscles now. My muscles were
Oh,
starting like
absolutely.
I was starting to get the lines in my legs, like to show like the muscle definition and everything. I was that was starting to come together, but yeah, the rest it was still jiggly and wiggly, and that's okay.
Exactly. 100%. And, especially because like, we know that you don't lose weight in, like, 3, 6 months like that, and yet people are like, "Oh, man, by the time you're done, you're gonna be so skinny." Like, it's not how that works.
Not
It's
how
not
that works. And that's another expectation that people put on you too, because then, you finish your trip and then your whole trip is devalued by this whole expectation because people look at you and they're like, you're still the same size. Why can we not start with that? Can you just like acknowledge that I did this really great thing as a plus size person and which actually shouldn't even matter. Like our bodies are capable of amazing things no matter what size you are and what you might be going through. Whatever. Like your body is it's amazing.
exactly, for sure. And I
Oh my
think, like, a lot of people just really don't get that, like, they just don't
God.
get, like, our bodies are far more capable, and while I was out there, just the small little things were just so energizing, like, while I was
Yeah.
on my bike and I was able to, uh, push off to keep going, and I didn't have to get off my bike to at a stoplight and
Yeah.
get back on, like, those small little things, it's like, that
Yeah.
me losing weight versus me realizing my muscles are actually getting stronger and my body's adapting was just far more,
Yeah.
exciting for me because it's like I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm gonna make and it gives you that confidence, like, you're gonna make it to the end, you're gonna do great,
Yeah.
And, like, trying to express that when people are so focused on, "Did how many pounds did you lose?" and da da da,
Yeah.
it's like, that's not what I'm focused on, not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. I don't even see that. I think sometimes people have expectations not just with your body, but also the way you look from a race standpoint. They think and it is true that your experience is tailored, or I shouldn't even say tailored. Those things do influence people's experience, right? They do. But the idea that I, as an individual, take on something thinking about those at the forefront of my mind, I don't notice that I'm fat. I don't notice that I'm black. I just go and do things that other human beings want to do and enjoy, right? Like
Exactly.
that's not, the only time that I notice that I am different in some way is when someone else points it out to me or wraps my whole identity around the thing that I just did or accomplished, right? So
Exactly.
and so like, when I did my first cycling trip, I wasn't thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm black. I need to be careful. Don't ride here. Don't do that." Don't. I was just riding. I didn't see myself as like, okay, I need to tailor or do things differently because of who I am. And that even goes down to being a woman. Like yes, I understood I needed to be vigilant. I needed to be careful. But that was normal. I would the same things that I took for myself. I would hope that a man in whatever way is doing that for himself as well, right? I
Mm,
like again, I think that the experience is different. Men are going to have to think about different things while they're out there. Women have to think about different things while they're out there. But at the end of the day, we all got to be careful. We all got to be
yes,
vigilant. We all got to watch our surroundings. We all got to follow our gut. Like that's something you mentioned in the beginning, right? You got to watch. You got to follow your gut and make sure you're paying attention to signals. That's just how it is. And then your identity comes next, right? That comes next. But once again, that only comes up when someone points it out. And before we move on, because I really want to hear you mentioned Alaska and Korea, so we gotta get into this because those are the two places that I want to go but have not yet. So let's go get into that. But before I go into that, I had an experience where someone stopped me in the pickup truck, and I was just riding along, and they stopped me with my dog. My dog's barking and growling at them, and they came up to me and they were like, "I've never seen a fat black woman do this before." And this was in Texas, okay? So, so okay, I was like, thank you. I
Like, how are you supposed to respond to that?
I think that's a compliment. Thanks. I okay, that's awesome. Um, I'm glad I can change your perspective. All right. And then of course, I just from like our own community, Black women, I've met so many other Black women who want to cycle, who want to adventure, but the one thing that's keeping them back is the fear, right? And they'll say, "Oh, I don't know about going through the southern states." And then now, even now, like in our political climate, people being brown skinned and being afraid of, the things and the perceptions that people might have. And now you got ICE and things like that. We won't get into politics, but there's just these fears that people have because of the media and the news that they're watching that's keeping them from doing that. And, I wasn't thinking about that while I was out there, but you have people and their fears that projects onto you, and therefore you start to now notice those things about yourself. And then of course, while you're on the road, people also point it out, and then you notice it about yourself. So how has your experience been with that? I know you mentioned in Korea that people were asking about that, but what are some of the things that maybe you've had to shield in order to continue to just to be you and to just do it, or did you not have to do that? What was that like for you?
I think for me, because I was coming out of 2020 and everything that happened around that time,
Yeah.
at first, uh, going into it, I was very afraid.
Uh,
But once I got out there, it kind of like that fear wasn't like the like the foremost fear. Like it
yeah.
wasn't the thing that I was paying attention to. Like you said, it would only get brought up as if it was brought up by somebody else, and for the most part, I'd get more anxiety, like, where am I going to sleep for the night? Or
Yeah.
I think the biggest one in the beginning was like, this bike is so heavy. Like, trying to really like, is am I going to even, especially in the beginning, I was like, am I going to even make it with how heavy this bike is? Like when you have those fears when you're at home, it's one thing, but
Yeah.
then when you're out there on the bike, you're going to have a whole bunch of other different problems. And
Yeah.
that's going to uh, take over your mind, where you're not thinking about like the big things that you thought you were going to think about, like, oh, are people
Yeah.
going to hate me or something like that? And
Yeah.
my biggest thing was, am I gonna even make it with this heavy ass bike? Because it's so heavy. And like I was crying in the beginning, like it's so, you know, and it's like, and then that's when like the different magic started. Like somebody,
Uh-huh.
like I went home with somebody, like a husband and wife, and who
Yeah.
happened to have written across America as well. And they're like, you don't need this. You could send that home. You could send that home, and like you start to meet people that actually care and they're
Uh-huh.
focused on like helping you get from point A to point B,
Yeah.
and you realize like, people do care
Yeah.
if you give them the chance to care,
Yeah.
and and a lot of it did start melting away. But like for me, like there were certain things, like when you think about your gut, like I
Yeah.
still was not comfortable with like stealth camping just yet. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not gonna just stop in somebody's yard or
Yeah.
just like I just can't do it yet,
Yeah.
and just understanding like what works for me to
Yeah.
help me get across this country and 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 enjoy it, but I would get like those stares and people being
Yeah.
surprised I was there, and
Yeah.
I just kept going because it's like
Yeah.
I can't do nothing about it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, yep, I am a fat black woman on a bike. That's just what it is, you just keep going, if that's the reason
Until
why
you
you're
get
staring.
something.
Like, I got nothing for you.
Yeah.
Like it just is, So,
Oh, goodness.
but for the most part, like once I was out there, like you do start realizing like you belong here.
Yeah.
You're good. Just let yourself keep going, and
Yeah.
over time, you you'll realize like you'll be fine, and
Yeah.
so for me,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the big thing.
Yeah, and sometimes I wonder too if it's kind of like that whole effect, when prior you mentioned prior to going on the trip, you had those fears and those worries, but that's because when you're settled and you're in your comfort zone, that gives you more space to think about all the things going on outside of the comfort zone,
Exactly.
right? Right? So it gives you more space to think about that. Once you're outside of the comfort zone, that's the least everything you were thinking about prior is the least of your worries, right? It's like I just need to get up this mountain pass and not have a heart attack. Like, look, can we just can we just do that? You know,
Exactly.
let's just do that.
Or can these mosquitoes leave me alone?
Oh my,
So
the
many things.
mosquitoes, Wendy, the mosquitoes. Okay, the worst mosquitoes that I had was on the CNO, the Chesapeake CNO Canal
Oh,
Trail.
yeah, that's what it was.
Oh, really? That was for you
That's
too?
the first trail, yeah. I went through all the emotions on that trail. Like, while I was out there, I hated that trail. But, like, looking back, like, I'm like, "Okay, it was
I
okay."
love
But
it.
back then, I was just like, "This trail sucks." And then, like, the trees
Oh,
were down half the
uh,
time and
oh
had to pick
yes.
up the bike and put them over. Like, I have footage of myself, and you just hear me complaining. Like, I'm just like it's like, "Ugh." Like,
What is it? What is
why is
it?
there another tree? Like,
Uh-huh. And the
like
and the water was then I think I ran into a mudslide, so I had to trudge through that. And oh my goodness. And then, of course, the mosquitoes. And that was also the first trail that I got my womanly time of the month. And you know what? I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I have a period. I didn't bring nothing. I didn't bring pads. I didn't bring tampons. I was just out in the wild. Having a period. I was like, oh shoot, I thought about everything but the thing that I've been going through every month for the last 20 years. Oh my God.
so it's
Okay.
it's funny for uh Alaska. That's what took me out in Alaska because
Oh,
that's
you're in
what
bear
took me out
country in
there.
Alaska.
No, I was so worried about the bears. I'm like, oh my period. No, because I was just so worried. Like, and then my period just wouldn't stop. It was the longest my period had ever gone. And like so many, I was like asking people on the internet, I'm like, is this a thing? And they're like, it's probably because you're stressed. You need to let yourself calm down. But then I'm out in Alaska, like these bears are bears like sharks. Are they gonna come
Oh
out?
my.
I was just so stressed, but whew, you
Oh
don't think about that stuff when you're thinking about everything else.
yes. It's oh my goodness. And the reason why I even brought all that stuff up was because I was thinking maybe the reason why we don't have these experiences that we know happen, like racism, all that stuff exists. It does. But I think when you're out there meeting people, you all are outside of the comfort zone now because here you
Yes.
are talking to this stranger who's doing this remarkable thing. They're on their bicycle going, and now you are stepping outside of your comfort zone to learn more about them and this interesting thing that they're doing. And then hopefully I would think that the person that is talking to me is now not thinking about just my race and the fact that I'm a woman on a bicycle. They're also now like, oh, okay, how do we help her to accomplish her goal? How do we get her to the next destination? How do we make sure she has food and a place to stay? And I experienced that a lot when I was on the road too. And
Yeah.
so while I know that people may have some of those biases going on in their back of their brain, I think we're all now brought outside of our comfort zone in a good way. This is not a bad place to be, right? We're now outside of our comfort zone just thinking about and rallying around this goal that we now that I've invited them into, you've invited them into, and now we have the same goal. And so I think that's something that you see where people are able to set aside any preconceived notions and stereotypes and things like that and just be like, how do I help and how do I become a part of this really cool thing?
I 100% agree. I remember there was this guy, he had also biked across Canada,
Mm,
and during the 2020 time, he had asked, people, especially black people, like, what type of adventures did you want to do and why haven't you done them?
oh,
And I remember I told him like I wanted to do a biking adventure, but I was afraid because of my race. And he goes,
Yeah.
when you put yourself in those situations, exactly what you said,
Yeah.
you start to change the narrative, right? People
Mm.
see you
Yeah.
because you're outside of what the stereotypes that they've been like thrown at their whole lives. Like
Yeah.
you've suddenly broken these stories, and you're
Yeah.
creating a whole new one by just existing. And the more that like we let ourselves exist for ourselves, we start to change these narratives that you know people um these preconceived narratives that people have had, because now these narratives are true. Like you are this person that they met, and
Yeah.
it's a true story
Mm.
that has not only impacted you but impacted them. And together
Yeah.
you have this goal of
Yeah.
how do you get this person to
Yeah.
complete this overall big goal,
Yeah.
and how can you be a part of that, and
Yeah.
and that really like shifted my perspective, because you do let fear a lot of people do
Yeah.
let fear dictate how they exist in the world. And it's like,
Yeah.
don't let somebody else tell you how you can exist. Just let yourself go and do the
Yeah.
things that are interesting to you, and the story will play out the way that it is intended to play out, so.
Awesome. I love it. I'm gonna have to watch your videos on Korea because based on what you just said, which was just beautifully said, so I can't even expand on that. That was perfect. And I will rewatch this conversation a lot because I think the way that you said that is something that's been holding me back because now that I'm back in the comfort zone of my life, some of those things have arisen again as far as things that hold me back from doing the things that I want to do. And one of the biggest ones is Korea. I have wanted to cycle Korea for the longest time, but I was worried about how they view bodies, especially big bodies. There's a lot of skinny people in Korea, and I've heard stories from my Korean friends where they are not afraid to call out the fact that you were fat, you know? And so I was like, let me lose a little weight before I go there because I don't know if I want to be, I think it'll crush me if some little kid comes up to me and says, oh, fatty, something like that. I think it'll crush me. I don't know if my heart can take that. So I've been waiting, putting off this South Korea trip for the longest, waiting to lose weight, but I just can't let go of the ice cream. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't had ice cream yet. Okay, but I can't let go of the sugar. So, one, one, let me know how many trips you've been on so far in the places, and then can you expand on Korea because I really want to know your experience there. Yeah.
For sure. So yeah, I've been Alaska. So
Uh-huh.
Alaska was the original intention was go to Alaska to Mexico, like the end to California.
Okay, nice.
Um, did not do that. I
Okay.
got to Washington and then I went home.
Okay.
And a big part of that is I got sick, but
Okay.
um, but I also really understood the type of cycling that I liked. I
Yeah.
wasn't um, it wasn't my favorite, and it just caused a lot of stress and
Yeah.
anxiety.
Yeah.
And but it was a really great experience for sure. And Alaska's beautiful. I just think I want to experience Alaska in a different way, just not on a
Yeah.
bike, just for myself. Like, unless if it's like I'm with a group trip or something. And I
Yeah.
do want to do like backpack bike packing trips for sure, where
Okay.
you're kind of like doing those trail rides and stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
feel like I want to do that with a group. Like the first time I want to do it with a group. So like I know I'm not by myself, and I could learn and I could be with other people, and
Uh-huh.
that overwhelming and that anxiety isn't like the forefront of the whole cycling trip, because
Yeah.
that really was when I was out there. Like the first part was okay, but like once you start getting farther into it, and I just like you
Yeah.
realize just how alone you are. And
Yeah.
then everybody and their mother wants to talk about how big bears are, and they're just like out there, or they'll be like the moose. And I'm just like,
Oh,
I'm just
yeah.
like, "Okay," and then they send you log, "Have a great trip." I'm like, "Thanks, guys."
Thanks, I feel so
Like,
secure.
you know, like, it just wasn't okay, it wasn't helpful, and 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 I just realized, like, I was just stressed on that trip. I was stressed, I was overwhelmed, and I had to come to the realization that I just didn't like it, you know, and
Uh-huh.
but then, like, eventually I did get sick and uh, I couldn't get it under control while I was out there, so
Okay.
I
Oof.
was just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna just go home and let myself recover." But
Mhm.
then, like, Korea, I learned about the Four Rivers Trail
Yep.
prior. I think I learned about it in 2018. It was one
Okay.
of those bike trails that I never thought I'd do,
Yeah.
but I've always found it interesting, and I finally made the decision to go there because just like you, like, I was worried about
Yeah.
my weight as well, and then
Yeah.
I was just like, "Screw it, I'm just gonna go," you
Yeah.
know? And, uh, and I went there, and, I rode every single kilometer, and I got all the stamps in the
Good.
book. It was so good, but, like, I think the I think the biggest thing is, like, you can learn all the statistics about that trail, but, like, once you get slapped in the face with those mountain passes are something. Like, they were like, and it's like you go over mountain passes in a lot of places, but
Uh-huh.
those were different type of mountain. They're just so steep, and then you're pushing your bike, and, like, when I make the videos, I haven't made them about Korea, like, just
Uh-huh.
make sure, like, people know, like, you don't need to pack everything, you just need to pack enough. And I can
Yeah.
see why some people only pack, like, their wallet in themselves half the time because it's just like you don't wanna be pushing a whole lot, uh,
Yeah.
up up those mountain passes, but other than that, like, it was a great experience. Like, people were still very kind, and people still wanted to help. Am I the one frozen?
I
Uh-oh.
think you're slow, but that I can still hear you very well.
Did I Oh, there you
There
are.
there you go. Cool. Yeah, I
Okay.
could hear you fine, but your picture was up. So I just waited. I was
Yeah, it's like
like Yeah, so in Korea, you people were still very kind, and it's probably that same effect, right?
yes,
They're not yes, they probably
exactly.
have those biases, but yeah, go ahead. Oh, never
People
mind.
were yeah, like, it's interesting 'cause, they they were obviously shocked to see me because me being bigger on a bike, and then, like, especially if you're already 200, uh, kilometers into the ride, and they're like, "You got all the way over here," and so they were already, like, excited about it, and so weight was never, like, an issue because 'cause they're like,
Yeah.
"You clearly already did it," like, or, so, like, they can't argue with you,
Yeah,
like, they can call
yeah,
me fat all they want to, like, I'm fat all the way over here, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah,
that was the biggest thing 'cause it was like, they can't change the flex, like, I'm here, and I rode my bike all the way here,
yeah,
uh, and so I was like, okay, I was comfortable with, like, just even, like, those times where I was just crying up a mountain. I'm like, "I'm gonna cry up this mountain because it sucks," And it's
yeah,
like, because at the end of the day, I'm proud of myself because I got myself up those mountains. I got myself all, uh, 400 kilometers, and I was able to complete that goal, and And despite, what people think bigger bodies are capable of at the end of the day,
yeah,
clearly that's not the case,
yeah,
So, um, yeah,
yeah,
I
and
think
you
I think anybody that desires to do that, they should for sure
yeah, and
try
you were
it.
the
It was good.
testimony. Yeah, just like you said earlier, you were the testimony.
Absolutely.
If they had some kind of preconceived notion before, you had now just shattered that by living the experience and showing that, and that's probably not even something you think of. but your very presence is already a testimony to it, whether you bring it up or not.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Oh my goodness. So I guess I need to let me get my notepad and book my trip to Korea. Oh my goodness. I'm inspired. I
No,
definitely want.
I agree because my sister, she's going back in next week. She'll be leaving
Okay.
the third to go back to Korea because she
Okay.
has like a a camp that she's going to, and my plan was to go with her because I didn't get to go to Jeju. I was gonna
Uh-huh.
bike Jeju as well,
Oh
but
yeah,
it was
nice.
getting cold when I was
Yeah.
there in September, and um and my equipment just wasn't warm enough.
Yeah.
So when I go back and I want to bike Jeju, and I also because I did the whole bike passport thing, I want to complete all that as well. So
It's
um,
awesome.
get all the knickknacks that come with it.
Yeah. Oh, that's how I want to go to. Take me, Whitney. You could be my first. You could be my first.
100%. We can bike it together.
Yes, we need to plan that for the future. I have to I have to wait for my best friend to end her chapter, so I'm waiting for that to happen, and then I'm trying to think of what my first because I've never done a trip without my dog. So that's going to be the adjustment for me is
Mm,
that first trip without a dog. And I would say that was probably a cushion for me, because I had a dog with me, right? And a dog can be a protection, a dog can be
right.
company, companionship. So, to go completely solo, I've never had that experience. I've always had my dog with me. So I I think that might be the trail for me. I think I'll go to South Korea and that'll be my first either solo or have a human companion.
No, I mean, I think it's for like a solo person, it is a really good trail. It is very hard, but like again, knowing like if you don't pack too much stuff, uh, because I did,
Yeah,
I packed as if I was going cross America. Like you just need
yeah,
to pack enough because
yeah,
all of the resources that you need are they have them there. Like one thing that was really amazing is like their convenience stores have the the little cans for camping. Like they have
yeah.
everything you need. Like uh
I'm
uh
going. I'm
everywhere. So
going.
yeah, I think it's a fantastic trail. And then on top of that, they have even more trails. I think it's like 9 different trails. So the
Okay.
long one is what I did was Incheon to Busan. But
Uh,
then I wanted to do some of the other trails too, because apparently those are even prettier. And then
wow.
Jeju, and so
Yeah.
100% for sure.
Wow, wow. I can't remember what her name is. Oh, her channel I think is Cycling Around the World or something like that. She's Korean and she was on the road for 11 or 13 years. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yes, and she finished her
she
trip
ended
around.
in Korea right when I was
Yeah,
like when I
yeah.
was there too. Yeah.
Do you know her name?
Oh,
Oh,
I
I have
feel
to
like
look
I
it up
know
on
what it
you.
is, but yeah, I'd have to look it up.
I can't believe it. I would love to be
I
on
feel
the
like it's
road for
Jin.
13. Jen, okay, yeah.
I
I'll have to
think
look it up because
so.
I'm subscribed to her, but oh my goodness, I think it was 11 or 13 years she was on the road. That's
She went
amazing.
everywhere.
Amazing. And to end it on the South Korean trail on that trail in South Korea is just I mean, amazing. So, if there are signs, it's from talking to you today, plus her ending in South Korea. I know that's her home, but once again, all the signs telling me I have to go to South Korea. So, you've been in Alaska. Are you going to go back and try to do that Alaska trip, or is that just a no for you? That's not your type of riding.
I don't I don't think so. Like the Pacific Crest Highway was I think that's like that trail that
Yeah,
bike ride is still interesting to me, but I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like
yeah.
I probably want to do maybe it. in a road trip form
Yeah,
and not
that would
in
be nice.
a on the bike, you know? And one
Yeah,
of the biggest things that I've come to the realization is I know I want to do where I can like pack my bike in
yeah,
like a van or something and then let
yeah,
myself go to drive myself to different
yeah,
trails and I'll park and just ride trails and stuff like
yeah,
that. Do it that way. But
yeah.
I don't think I'm to like the Alaska trip that I just don't think that's for me at this
Yeah,
moment. I don't know
yeah,
what the future brings, but at this moment, it's not for me. So
yeah. Well, I have done that with the van when Fiji, as she was starting to slow down, I was like, okay, she's not going to be able to do these long trips. So I would take a car, drive, get out, ride, drive, get out, ride, blah, blah, with her. And that was a lot of fun. So I highly recommend it if you ever want to do that. So at this point in your journey, what's next for you, or what are you currently working on? And I know you said you wanted to do more adventure films, but what is next for Whitney?
I for sure want to do more adventures in general. You know, I did my biking stuff, and there's more bike trails that I want to experience.
Yeah.
I want to do like bike packing and do more off road stuff, but I also want to try the things that are very interesting to me. Surfing, one of them, like doing the journey of learning how to surf, you know, and I see that it is possible even in at my size. And so I want to make sure I learn how to surf and um,
Yeah.
learn how to do. I want to go on like kayaking trips and stuff like that. So I want to do more adventures um,
Yeah.
and not like wait until again if I lose weight or something. I
Yeah.
clearly see that it's very much possible in
Oh
this
yeah.
body, and so um, those are definitely like my next steps. And when I was in Korea, I had before Korea, I had started posting my bike ride across America, and
Uh-huh.
videos started to gain traction.
Yeah.
However, it did, and
Yeah.
people were watching it and they really loved it. And when I was in Korea, I was doing live streams and people were enjoying the
Nice.
live streams. They were with me for like good 4 hours sometimes.
Nice.
And like the last video, they were with me all the way to the finish line and so I want to definitely do those kinds of adventures again and have more like
Yeah.
community building and having
That's awesome.
conversations with people that were on YouTube. They're like, "Yeah, I'd love to do adventures together." Like
Yeah.
I want to create like some kind of group trip stuff like that. I think
Oh
those
my
that would be really
goodness.
fun.
Let's stay
So
in
for
touch.
sure, I think that'd be so great because it resonates with people. And I remember like with my first trip, like there were people who were like, you know, because of your trip, I got a bike for the first time and I'm riding around my neighborhood
Yeah.
and I want to do bike rides as well.
Yeah.
And you just you know like that when I started out this, one of the biggest things was really showing stories, you know, because stories are important
Yeah.
because people won't know what's possible without them, you know,
Yeah.
because we do kind of restrict ourselves with the way that socially certain things work, you know, and
Yeah.
we don't see like a bigger body can very much ride across America. Bigger body
Yeah.
can very much surf. You know, it's that's not what we see in normal mainstream. So as a filmmaker, I really want to just continue with that narrative and show
Yeah.
people like it's very much possible at any size.
Yeah.
100%, you know, just give yourself a chance to exist and uh,
Yeah.
do the things that are interesting to you. So
Yes. Awesome. And to do things outside of the comfort zone because
100%.
yeah, because things, I mean, people are, everybody is going to have different experiences. Somebody may choose to cycle and then they're like, no, no, this is not for me. Don't
Exactly.
ever want to look at a bicycle again. And then, but they might climb Mount Everest and then we're looking at them like they're crazy. Like, well, okay.
Exactly.
Like that does it for you? Okay, I'm not, who am I to tell, so everybody has their thing, everyone has their transformative experience. As long as it exists outside of the comfort zone and you challenge yourself to think outside of that, hey, whatever works for you. So thank you so much for sharing. You've inspired me. And it's funny too because I've been through this a few times myself and I've had my own experiences, but when I listen to other people's stories, there's something you can always learn and take away and resonate with, and just it reinvigorates you. So now I'm thinking about my old days, but now the future that I can create. So I truly appreciate you sharing your story with the world. And even though I hated filming and hated blogging and will never write a book, because I just cannot stand any do I mean I like doing those things, but not in the context of my bicycling trip. That was
Yeah,
the worst. I admire people like you who do it because it does leave this footprint for the world to see that people are capable of it, and now I can do something possibly like that too, or at least try, right? So uh,
right.
yeah. So any last things you want to leave for the people that are going to be listening to this wonderful, wonderful conversation?
Yeah, just go try the things that are interesting to you, very
Yeah.
much like Jasmine said, and get outside that comfort zone because on the other side is very much magical. And there's so much out there that you'll get to experience if you allow yourself to just try things and exist in those places that, you know, you have a desire to exist in, but you may be scared to. And one of the biggest things about fear is like, learning that idea that the things that you're scared of is probably what you need to go towards. And so if you're interested in trying biking or climbing Mount Everest or whatever it is, like let yourself try things, let yourself write new chapters in your story. You don't have to, if the day to day is not working for you, see what other things are interesting to you too, and give it a chance. So
I have nothing else. You said it good. I'm not gonna say anything. Thank you so much, Whitney, and
thank you.
have a wonderful, wonderful day. And will be posting a video in about 6 months of us in South Korea. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I mean, 100%. Let's do it.
Bye, Whitney.